Do you have trouble talking about your feelings? You're not alone. It's a topic that can make even the most powerful people somewhat squeamish. You're listening to Feelings Matter, where our mission is to demystify everything about emotions so that we can all get more comfortable talking about them. Join Tina and Michelle every week as we unpack a new angle on emotions, drawing upon the science of the brain and the psychology of human nature.
I'm Michelle Stinson Ross.
And I'm Tina Schweiger.
Today we are discussing why do we seem to value happiness over other emotions? Western culture and American culture in particular does value the experience of happiness over other emotions. And by all means, you can shoot me down anywhere along the way. But think about it, though. Going way back even to our Declaration of Independence, and I made sure I got the quote right when I looked it up. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The preamble of the Declaration goes on to say that we formed a government in order to protect that right to pursue happiness. And I'm like, wow, okay, interesting. I don't know. To a degree, I think in Western culture and the English language, we're kind of obsessed with it. Happily ever after, happily married. I kind of giggled because as I was putting this together, I realized that we at Mindful Appy have a happiness experiment.
We do. And I have to also call out the most famous tune, like music tune in the world, is Happy Birthday to You.
Mm-hmm.
Or in our culture, at least. You might be debating that if you're living in, the East or Asia.
But pretty much anybody that speaks English is familiar with this tune. I went a little bit further when I was doing this. I actually, just for the fun of it, looked up how to be happy just in books. I filtered my Amazon search just for books about how to be happy. There were over 8,000 results in that Amazon search for how to be happy. This one particular title cracked me up. So check this out. Positive thinking. Harness the power of self-talk to increase confidence, help your energy, and be happy. Change your attitude with emotional intelligence, positive psychology that trains your brain. I'm like, that's seriously the title of the book. That whole thing is the title of the book.
Sounds like they may have been going for all the keywords.
They were going for all the keywords. That brings me to the point of, oh my goodness, look at what other words we associate with happy, right? Whether that's positive psychology, more energy, better life. There's this whole thing built around our Western concept of happiness.
I think happiness by its very nature comes and goes. So the fact that we pursue happiness as a destination, if you will, that our government is set up to pursue happiness as a destination, could be a little bit of a problem for people when they realize that happiness does come and go. And in fact, you can't even experience happiness unless you have felt deep grief or deep sadness, because you might just take it for granted.
Culturally, this is a thing. We're obsessed about it. We want to feel better. We want to feel happy. Let's just be honest here and admit that the hormonal, biochemical, all of those responses that physically happen to us when we feel happy, we're kind of addicted to it. It's almost like a drug, I think.
It is a drug. There's that lovely dopamine in your brain. That's that sense of feeling happy. And that is our brain's reward system. I had read something recently about habit forming, and we go about it all wrong, thinking that if you're going to form a habit, you have to have enough discipline to do something. But actually it's that dopamine and happiness. If you do something and you can create an outcome of the feeling of happy, your brain is actually going to form that habit all in of itself, because we're programmed to pursue happiness, not even putting our whole cultural structures around it or just being obsessed with it. Our brain chemistry rewards us for doing things that make us happy.
So there might be good reason for us to value that experience of being happy.
I think so. I don't think we've figured it out yet, though. Apparently, there's 8,000 books on it.
This is true. So I have a question for you. Are we taught then to label feelings as good or bad? Is that part of what's going on with our overvaluing? And this is my opinion, by the way. I'm saying this because I feel like this is Feelings Matter after all. I feel like we kind of lean a little too hard into feeling happy rather than being a lot more balanced about our approach. And I'm wondering if some of that may be because we make a judgment call on it.
It's hard not to value happiness over everything when it's so pervasive in our culture and how we're wired as humans. It's easy to value happiness over all other emotions and declare it a morally good emotion, as opposed to a morally bad emotion, which may be guilt or feeling happy at someone else's expense, for example. Yeah, so the brain does reward it does reward you for doing things that help you feel happy, and therefore we think of those things as good or good emotions, or we want to feel happy, and anything that I can do to feel happy is going to be a good thing. It's not always the case. And it also does downplay negative emotions. And we, by contrast, may just say, hey, if happiness is a good emotion, then grief or sadness is a negative emotion. It's a bad emotion, and you want to avoid those emotions. Mm-hmm. And instinctually, I think we are programmed to avoid those emotions. We don't want to feel sad. We don't want to feel guilty. We don't want to feel anger or frustration or grief. But those are actually really important emotions, and we shouldn't dismiss them so quickly. The opposite of a good emotion and what a bad emotion is.
That also comes back to societal triggers, because I can remember incidents with family members where I've had somebody that's very important in my life straight up look at me and go, "Don't be so angry." And I'm like, I have every right to be angry. Excuse me? I'm feeling this right now.
I know. I get that all the time if you get angry and you express it, especially as a woman. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just that old mother figure in people, but they feel if you're angry that it's about them and that they need to take offense to your anger. Have you ever felt that way around people?
That particular person, that's exactly what was going on. Mm-hmm. It was like, your behavior has frustrated me to the point that I'm now feeling anger, mm-hmm. and we need to work this out. And immediately they got defensive. And the thing that came out of his mouth was, well, don't be so angry.
Right. Like, you're not allowed to be angry. If you're angry, then that means that I'm bad. Mm-hmm. Because mm-hmm. when my mom was angry when I was a child, that meant that I had done something bad. And people sometimes never get past that subconsciously. It's very, very deep. And it is easy to quickly write off an anger as somebody is mad and it's my fault and I've been bad. But really, expressing anger is healthy. We should express anger. And when somebody does express anger, rather than reacting with defensiveness, we should try asking, wow, you feel really angry, or you look like you feel really angry. What's causing that? What's the situation that's inciting this anger? And that can help in the longer term, more happiness, because you can gain more understanding between people. Mm-hmm. And know them better when you know not only what makes them happy, but what makes them angry. And you're okay with making them angry.
My initial question was, are we taught to label feelings as good or bad? You've already kind of covered this thought of, are we then taught to shut down emotions? So if I keep getting the message over and over and over, don't be angry, am I eventually going to shut down emotionally when I start to experience anger or start to experience anything else that over time, over and over, I've been told is not a good thing to be?
I know we do shut that down, and it starts at a really young age. I know when I was a child and I was crying, my baby boomer parents said, "Don't cry or I'll give you something to cry about." I was immediately told that I'd be punished for expressing sadness or grief or even anger. And I shouldn't make a lot of noise and I shouldn't express myself. And I need to hide that because it will offend everyone else in the room if I show that I'm angry or that I'm sad. And we need to hide those because those things are bad. I feel morally, I have been taught at a very young age that the negative emotions are to be hidden and that they are bad when you express them. Oh, it's so terrible.
Yeah, I was like, that makes me think about a few parenting moments. Because, I mean, we really don't think. The programming is so deep from our own childhoods that we just automatically, like on rails, go down that same path with our own children if we don't stop for just a hot second, go, wait a minute. What repercussion is this going to have?
I was so scarred by being told I couldn't feel sad that I think I've gone the opposite route with my kids that are very young. And if they get mad or they get sad, like, stop the presses. Let's not discuss the context of the situation. Let's talk about how you're feeling and what got you there. And, try to process that emotion. Because the faster you can process it, the faster you can actually get back to whatever the situation is that you're feeling about.
So part of the key to this is understanding that emotion is a signal.
It is a signal. Anger is a powerful signal. Grief is a powerful signal. Somebody told me once that grief is just misplaced love, right? You wouldn't have grief if you didn't have that deep sense of love. And I bring up grief now because we've lost 500,000 people over the past year in this country. I don't believe there's probably anyone in the country who hasn't been touched by the loss through COVID. And grief is only beginning for all of us as a culture.
Right.
And the reminder is when we do feel grief, look underneath that grief and know that it wouldn't exist without love in the first place. That's how it can be a signal in a relevant way right now.
Even when we're somewhat mindful and are aware of what we're feeling, even then we can feel guilty about it.
Yeah, we can. Have you felt guilty about feeling a certain way that you can think of?
Yeah. I think you and I both have had experiences of stepping back out of a toxic situation. For me, it was with an adult child that I needed to step back and go, oh, hang on a minute. You're no longer a dependent child, and I now need to put a boundary here. And I think you've kind of experienced some of the same. And
I did. The guilt of putting a boundary in. Why are we so guilty about that?
Well, for me, it was because it was with my child. I am changing the nature of the relationship with somebody that I love and care about very, very much. And so, yeah, it was hard to do that.
Yeah, it is. Or I remember days when, I've been married for 11 years now, but back in the days before, when you're dating or you have a boyfriend or a partner in your life and your feelings for that person change and you're like, wow, I was really enamored with this person and feeling so in love. And now I feel either indifferent or I feel dislike, or that changes. When you're experiencing a traumatic change in a relationship, it's often because of a feeling, and it's easy to see the negative outcome that your feelings can have for other people, and then therefore feel guilty for having those emotions because you feel like those emotions have somehow caused grief in other people, and they have. Can that be a bad emotion when your emotions cause grief in other people? These are philosophical questions at their
yeah.
core,
I mean,
think.
it gets deep in a hurry. Well, and all of that is that I now feel compelled to change the nature of this relationship because I no longer feel happy. This is not giving me joy anymore for whatever reason.
And that joy turns to pain and it turns to suffering. It's so sticky. Even at the very shallowest of levels, let's say back in the early days of the internet dating, in the early O's, and I would have a date, then realize that, that there's no chemistry here. I would try to be nice about it and say, you're a really great person. I didn't feel a chemistry, but I know that you're going to find somebody. And I felt obligated to let somebody down easy and not have my lack of interest, especially if there was interest in me, make that person feel bad. And I think that's when we hold a responsibility in ourselves for making another person experience a negative emotion, that shows how deeply we judge negative emotions as bad. Because if we didn't judge negative emotions as bad, I wouldn't have no problem walking up to somebody and saying, hey, we've been dating for a few months. We really fell in love quickly. And I just all of a sudden decided that I can't stand you and my feelings have changed and you're going to, have to move on now. I mean, you'd be a sociopath or maybe a narcissist to not feel bad about making somebody feel a negative emotion. But that negative emotion may be exactly what that person needs at that time in their life.
Well, it's definitely could very well be the catalyst that enables them to break it off, move on, find somebody else.
Or understand what bad habit that they have that keeps pushing people away over and over again. I'm really interested in you and intense at the beginning. And then, I go back to work and I forget about you and I don't give you the same level of attention. And I do that with everybody. And everybody keeps breaking up with me at this particular time. It could be something that somebody really does need to feel and hear in order to spark change or spark awareness of the need to change in their own soul, if you will.
Sure.
It's a soul message, a negative emotion.
There is a lot there.
Support for this podcast comes from Mindful Appy. Your feelings matter and Mindful Appy can prove it. Try it out for free right now. Grab your phone and text the emoji that best represents how you feel to 972-480-6715. See how your feelings compare with other listeners of the Feelings Matter podcast. Again, text the emoji to 972-480-6715. And now back to the conversation with Tina and Michelle.
The mindfulness aspect of this. So rather than just immediately going, I feel angry, that's bad, stop feeling angry, shut it down. Or I feel happy, let's wallow around in that for a moment, because we do.
Because it won't last.
It's like, I want this to last for, or again, we go back to that addiction aspect of the dopamine and that sort of stuff. It's like, I need my next happy fix. But how does mindfulness either differ or short circuit that judgmental aspect of it?
It's so helpful in processing negative emotions. Mindfulness, the first step is awareness. When you think of the term mindfulness, or if there's a mindfulness exercise, it's when I walk, I'm going to pay attention to every moment when my foot hits the ground and what it feels like to lift my foot off the ground, and how is the wind interacting with my hair, and what is the light in the trees. So it's getting yourself into a state of hyper awareness that can be externally to you, or it can be internally, what's going on inside me, and being hyper aware of the changes and the nuances in the emotions that you're having. If you can become aware of that, you certainly can savor a good emotion when it's there in a healthy way. And there's a lot of research that shows Barbara Fredrickson, the notable positive psychologist, has a theory called broaden and build. That theory is if you can be mindful of a positive emotion and you can focus on it, particularly where it lives in your body, if you feel it in your chest or your throat or your stomach or your top of your head, it tingles. You focus on the physical sensation or the breath in that state of a positive emotion, you will increase the rewards in your brain, and it will increase your propensity for feeling positive emotions, and you'll feel them more often. It's this kind of reverse snowball effect.
I gotcha. So that's the same kind of thing that a lot of articles online will tell you. Just practice smiling. Just the physical act of engaging those muscles, that because all of that is biochemically associated with being happy, you can kind of trip a little bit of that trigger into, get a little of that dopamine and starting to feel a little bit better because you're like,
you sure can. And
okay.
That's
interesting.
Smiling is the thing that is how we show it when we're happy. So it does connect with our brain, and it does signal our brain that we should be happy, and we can trick ourselves. And that's called that training your brain part of that book title, that really long book title. And on the opposite side, you can pay attention to a guilt or a frustration. I would say the smallest irritations and things that you tolerate. Start noticing something that you tolerate. It could be something that annoys you. Like if you're a person that likes things to be neat and tidy, if you have something out of place and you look at it, do you register that it bothers you, or do you just ignore that sensation and keep on with what you were doing? If you stop and pay attention to that, you could, hey, you know what? My dog shredded this paper on the floor, and it really annoys me when I look down and I see all these paper shreds, especially if it was something I needed. Oh gosh, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to stop everything I'm doing and pick it up, because I don't want to reactivate that annoyance the next time I look at that. And I was too lazy to pick it up. So what do you tolerate? And that's really
I've done that to myself. I live alone. I've done this to myself.
Yeah.
We were giggling because you can see my couch over my shoulder here. I had to stop and put laundry away because I do it to myself. I'm like, I'll wait until later.
Right.
Until later. And I've probably looked at that like 10 times before I finally said, okay, the camera's going to pick that up. I'm going to move that.
So you reinforced the experience of a negative emotion for yourself 10 times because these are these unconscious behaviors that we have where we're just this is mindlessness, which is the opposite of mindfulness, mindlessly going from point A to point B, getting caught in our self-narrative of what are we saying that needs to happen next? Are we in a hurry? Are we going to be late for something? What's the reason we're giving ourselves to tolerate that mess longer? Oh, I do it all the time. Don't feel bad, but it's a good thing to pay attention to. And at the grander scheme, there's the pet peeves that the minute that something happens or somebody says something in a certain way, you're off into irritated, and it's hard to get back out of it.
That just makes me think that, so how much of, if there are kind of minor irritant negative emotions, is there an analogous on the positive side of it where we're not really going off on something that has made us just so giddy we want to dance, but hey, that's still kind of a good thing. Yeah. Do we also need to train ourselves to pay more attention to that?
Some people need to train themselves more than others. There's science that talks about your personality type, and certain personality types are more prone to noticing and feeling good, and certain personality types are prone to focusing on the negative and focusing on those things that don't make you feel good. So people that are born looking at the glass half empty will have to train their brain quite a bit more than those who are born naturally optimistic, naturally happy, and open in their mindset and conscientious in their mindset.
Okay, interesting. So we could possibly experience more happiness if we just paid attention to it.
Mm-hmm. We sure could. You happy? I mean, you can just start simply by making a list and paying attention to when a positive feeling does come up. Make a note of what's going on at the time. You know, were you eating a certain food? Were you spending time with a certain person? Were you petting your animal? Were you on a walk? Creativity and self-expression is a really good place to look when you're looking for happiness.
I will say you see signs of things that make me happy all around me. So I have plants because I like to water them and talk to them because I'm that kind of weirdo.
You're not.
I like color. I also like color. So you see a lot of colorful things, and I've done it in such a way that I can actually get a lot more out of that color by the contrast. So I have nice, clean white walls, but then I have these pops of color in my furniture and in my clothing and all that kind of good stuff.
You are. There's an author, Ingrid Fattel, that is all about joy and designing your interior spaces to cultivate joy. I attended her webinar this past week. I'm sure we can link to it in the notes. And you're doing exactly what she recommended, which is don't start decorating your home thinking about what style you like, if I'm modern or if I'm traditional, or just going to the paint store to look at color palettes or tile and looking at those individual elements. You'll just get stuck. What you really need to do is think about the things that bring you joy. If color brings you joy, then to your point, having a white wall that can offset some of those bright colors is actively inviting happiness and joy into your daily life by surrounding yourself with things that spark the joy.
Nice. We've talked around it, but I need to ask you, what is happiness really? So what's going on in our mind? What's going on in our body when we experience what we call happiness?
For me, happiness is unlimited energy. It's a positive energy, and it's one that can keep you moving forward with curiosity. If you think about when you were a child, or if you watch children or you're around children, they don't really have a problem getting to a place of happy. It just happens. Mm-hmm. They can look at a particular game or a particular thing and just say, that thing, I'm overcome with happiness and joy because I see that thing. That thing makes me happy. It's purple and sparkly and fuzzy, and I like all those things. Mm-hmm. And we, as we grow up older into becoming adults, and we get self-critical and we try to keep up and we try to perform and we try to please others, we forget what makes us happy. And part of the self-discovery of happiness is to revisit what did make you happy as a child and remember those things and see, do they still make you happy now? And does that give you energy? Does it make you feel more energetic, or does it make you feel drained?
Okay. Again, the dopamine response. There's a biochemical thing happening. So what was going on that all of a sudden, hey, I'm feeling pretty good. I want to smile. This is good. Personally, I am a word girl. I'm a communicator. Things people say to me will just bubble over in joy. I get text messages from friends throughout the day, and people will say things that it's offhand. They have no idea how often I'm giggling on the other end of the phone, because just what you said and who you are, that makes me happy. And so I tend to continue to cultivate those conversations because I know you're going to say something that just makes me smile.
And you're going to get the reward in your brain. Mm-hmm. That's a very healthy way to pursue happiness, Michelle. It's better than the opposite, which is I'm going to see if I drink enough to make myself happy, or smoke enough to make myself happy, or using caffeine will make you happy. Cigarettes will make you happy. Drugs make you happy, but there's a downside to drugs because what eventually goes up must come down.
Yes. All of that eventually works out of your system again.
The words are a wonderful drug for finding happiness. For me, look behind me, it's the color. Mm-hmm. If I see certain colors, I'm a painter. If I see if I put a beautiful neutral gray next to a really bright red, like this environment that I'm in, the color combination can make me happy because there's a contrast between the saturation of the color and the mutedness of the gray. And I find joy in visual color combinations. So I'm a picture person.
I think we can probably agree that in Western culture, we're a bit obsessed with being happy.
I think we've just demonstrated that in the fact that we talked about happiness for probably about a half an hour. And I think we're going to need to use some of these as a jumping off point because I feel like there's still so many more conversations to have.
Absolutely, yes. So, yeah, we might be obsessed, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Hopefully, during this episode, you got some good information. You got a nice tip to kind of help improve your experience of happiness. So guys, tell us what you think. Drop us a note, leave a comment. You can ping us on our Facebook page. We're going to drop a whole bunch of links for you so that you can find out where to contact us. Tell us, what do you think?
What makes you happy?
What makes you happy?
Is it words? Is it gifts? Is it one of the love languages? Is it pictures, photography, animals? Grumpy cat maybe makes you happy. Let me know. I want happiness to grow. We need it.
We do. Thanks everyone for listening. Next time on Feelings Matter.
Grief is difficult. I think it's one of the most difficult of emotions because it's at the core of our human condition, which is temporary. And grief comes from loss, especially loss of loved ones.